Hi, everyone. Good evening in South Asia, and good morning to everyone in Texas, United States. And I welcome to each and every audience from the LabVIEW users group, as well as the LabVIEW Advantage YouTube channel. Today, we're continuing our interview sessions with the LabVIEW personalities, as well as the LabVIEW champions from all over the world. So on this series, we have spoken with many LabVIEW champions from different group with different diverse skills and different industry from UK, from France, from US, and from India as well. But today, I'm going to introduce you like one of the pioneers of the LabVIEW champion, as well as the LabVIEW itself. I had the opportunity to meet him 2 years ago in India during the first Indian CLA summit, and I had a opportunity to learn a lot from him. So hopefully, like this interview is going to be one of the best interviews, or one of the. It has been like one of the best opportunity for me to learn personally and interview a personality like him. So with further ado, I'm going to introduce you Norman Kirchner Jr. Okay, thank you very much, Norman. Like the like screen is up
You know
to
how to
you.
make
So.
an introduction to somebody. Make them. You set some pretty high standard for the interview here. So hopefully we can live up to part of that at least. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Norman, for like taking up your time, and then giving me the opportunity and our audience to take the interview from you. So
Yeah,
the floor
I
is
remember.
yours, and then like we're all here to like hear exciting adventure of yours, how you started using LabVIEW, and everything what you have done so far.
How long do we have to the interview?
It can go as far as you can. Like this interview can be recorded till like 8 hours, but I don't think like we have that much time. But let's do it. Yeah, let's start it.
We'll give it a start. So, so like many people, in terms of learning LabVIEW, a lot of us learn it starting at university. So no difference for me. I was an electrical and computer engineer, was in a lab class. I was an okay programmer. I wasn't, I enjoyed programming, but I didn't really, I wasn't like programming all the time for the heck of it and fun. And when I was in this lab class, they're told, here's getting started LabVIEW guide for students. Read the book, take a quiz, and then continue with all of your lab exercises. Some of them that needed to automate. And it turned out to be that in the class and doing the exercises, everything just started coming real naturally. And I'm in a fraternity. I'm in Triangle Fraternity. And all of the other brothers that were in the class, that were in the fraternity house at the time, people just were struggling with it. And all of a sudden I started to become the person who, kind of the go-to person for trying to get these answers and homework solutions and whatnot. And next thing you know, when we're in the class or in the laboratory doing the exercises, the teacher's assistant didn't know, the teacher wasn't in there, it was just the lab assistant. Everybody's having these questions on how to program the instruments and how to use LabVIEW. Everybody's struggling. Most people were. And next thing you know, I kind of stuck my nose into it and started to be like, hey, and I was going around being the lab expert. I mean, what little I knew at the time, right? I mean, how much do you really know after, reading a getting started manual? But it just was one of those things that was real natural to me. And I just jumped on it. And so then when I was going on co-op, not that far afterwards, I was at a place called Hamilton Sunstream. They do aerospace type things. And I saw it being used, actively being used in industry. It wasn't this toy, that it gets a bad reputation for sometimes, just for college and stuff like that. And some people, they were doing some pretty interesting things. And it was just, I mean, there's so many steps in the story. I'd love to really go through all of them, but it just probably doesn't make sense to. But yeah, I saw it there. I went back to college, did a senior design project that was very well funded. that needed motor control and stuff, and so there's instruments I got used to and introduced to National Instruments hardware there. So I came back and like, hey, we need to do this motor control, so let's retrofit this laboratory with all this National Instruments motor control, and I'm trying to learn how to use LabVIEW, and then I go back to the same code. And that's where I met my first mentor. And so really, I guess if there was something worthwhile to talk about in terms of the interview, that's like more than just talking about how cool my journey was, mentors that I've had along the way, and the people that have really kind of added to the enthusiasm, because I think that's one of the things as a small community of programmers. I mean, let's be real. LabVIEW's not right, but I think our strength and our power is in the fact that we're small. The fact that, you know, I'm just some programmer that if I was a C programmer, I'd never get interviewed by anybody. But we're a community where all of a sudden, you know, I do a little bit, you know, I turn into a personality. So I appreciate that, but it was really because of the mentors along the way. In particular, the first one, his name is Tim James. He works at L3 Communications now. Great mentor to me to actually teach me how to write clean code and care about it too. He also taught me the principles of SMOREs: scalable, modular, reusable, extensible, simple. And it was through his tutelage, his mentorship, that I really not only did I enjoy doing LabVIEW, and it kind of came natural to me, but now all of a sudden I could look at what I was making, and you know, you don't feel like you're just wiring random. I have the ability to make it clean, and I think that's what so many people that working at National Instruments now. You know, years later, I graduated college, worked for a small company, was doing LabVIEW there, went for tech for a while, and now I'm at NI. But so many people struggle to write clean code because they just don't know what it could or should look like, and so they've never been given an example. They've never, you know, the examples that they've looked at have been too simplistic, that don't really match up with what they're attempting to do, and so. Having somebody to sit down with me to take a piece of code that I've written and have a relationship where I'm willing to accept his red marks and beating up on me, you know, multiple times over, to finally refine this simple task. It was like it was a manual viewer, you know, it was a laboratory for testing hydraulic power, and the idea was, hey, we need to prompt the user on the screen to like when to open the door, when to push a button, when to do these things. So it was a really simple interface. But we just went through probably about 8 revisions of what I had created. And then at the end of it, it's still something that I can look back at and say, that is a nice piece of code. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity to be mentored in that way, because how many people do you know that can say, looking at their code, you know, 5 years or 3 years into their learning experience with LabVIEW or programming in general for test and measurement, can say, I still like that code, I can still understand my code, it's still clean, even though it's very rare, textures, right? But it's still something. So I'm so grateful for that mentorship along the way. And then the other part of it and the mentorship was, once again, the LabVIEW user group. So that was actually another big part that I'll let you ask about maybe a little bit later, but we'll get back to how that kind of kickstarted my career. But yeah, so that's kind of how it all started in the lab. Got excited about it. Somebody took the time to mentor me and teach me how to do it right. And then Lava community, the LAVAG.org. When I was on my own, it was the entire community and wanting to be involved in it that took me past the little bit of knowledge and how to do it clean to how to do architecture in the rest of the world. And that was, there's a whole nother story that can be talked about there too. So.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting, Norman. Yeah. So like, can you also like speak to the people, like they may not know like how you got into, you know, the National Instruments, because I've seen like some of your like very older videos on which, you know, the scripting ninja videos, as well as the you were talking about like extensible session framework as well. So how did you like, everybody knows that you're the pioneer of the LabVIEW Champions community as well, and you champion as well. And how did you, got into National Instruments now? So how did that, the transition happen?
Sure. Well, let me set the record. Let me set the record. I'm not the pioneer. I'm definitely one of the first 10 members, possibly, of the LabVIEW Champions program, but definitely one of the pioneers of it. I was the way that I kind of got into NI is, I snuck in and I stole somebody's badge and I never left. No. No, I was working at Texas Instruments at the time, and I had already been a personality in the LabVIEW world. I definitely made a name for myself as much as I could on the LAVAG Forum. Not necessarily trying to make a name for myself, but I was just having fun. I loved interacting with the people. I was going to NI Week yearly, so I was not only being part of the community online, but then I get to meet everybody once a year, which was just such a great experience. We'd all come down to Austin and we'd meet at NI Week and we'd show up early and, we'd go to Ginger Man and we'd have just a good time and swap stories and concepts and ideas. And along the way, they started this Champions program. And there's a dirty little secret that pretty much in order to become a LabVIEW Champion, you just need to fill out an application. So if everybody fills out the application, it's going to dilute it, and you have to be sponsored by your salesperson and everything else. But if you're, I was enthusiastic enough about it, and the salesperson's like, well, "There's this thing that you should do." This is when I was working for Texas Instruments. I started in the community in about 2000. So this was around 2008, actually. So it was about 8 years into my LabVIEW career and everything else. And so I applied, and I got the LabVIEW Champion status. And if you remember, in 2008, there was all the socioeconomic downturn.
Crisis.
I was part of the very first wave of layoffs at Texas Instruments. It was a bit of a bummer because I was like the first one to go. I'm like, am I not valuable enough to stick around? But it turned out that my manager knew that my background in the LabVIEW community, the experience that I had, was strong enough because of being interactive in the community and to learn, to help people. That he's like, let him go first. He'll land on his feet. And indeed I did. I actually that's when I got the job at National Instruments. I had applied to different LabVIEW places. I had applied at Bloomy Controls, and I also had applied at VI Technology when it's still around. And those offers just weren't quite hitting. And then all of a sudden National Instruments called, "We know you." At the time, I was actually doing work with National Instruments at TI, PXI, and Wireless Laboratory. They're like, "Hey, we know that we've been working side by side with you. How about you just come work for us?" And so this was in the fall of 2008, and I was looking for a job, and so it seemed to be a great opportunity. NI was one of those careers that leaving college, I was very tempted to join, but the relationship I was in at the time, the woman was saying, "I'm not moving to Texas. They have their bugs are too big. I'm not moving to Texas." So I had to find a job at the time. So that's kind of what led me up there. But it was interesting to, coming to actually work at NI. It was so great to have the external experience before joining, because so many people join fresh out of college. To have that experience was great, and it really felt like coming home because there's so many people that I already knew. There's a barbecue place in the courtyard where I would send an email out to everybody that I already knew at National Instruments before joining. "Hey, starting the grill up at noon. Bring your meats from your freezer." But so that's kind of how I ended up making my way into the place. And unfortunately, when you join National Instruments, you lose your champion status. So two people that have been defrocked their champion moniker. So me and Nancy Jones, and so both of us were external, were LabVIEW champions, and then joined in. I still like to feel like I play with all the champions, and I try to sit with them at NI Week, and occasionally Kelly Hunka, the personality that she is, kind of ushers me out of the LabVIEW champion zone and kindly reminds me you're not a champion, so don't try to take advantage of all the things that we're doing for them. So, which is fair enough. It should be for
no, Norman, like you are like our LabVIEW champions, like forever. So like anyway, like you don't need to worry about that one.
I tried to declare myself. I think it was approved in one of the LabVIEW champions meetings. Ben Randall approved the idea of being called LabVIEW champion emeritus. So I think that was, or member at large, perhaps. I'm not quite sure, but whenever I go to NI Week and I get the, I was gonna say, do I have one of my? I have one of my badges here. Hold on a second.
Yeah, sure.
Where that? I think I still have it. Nope, I'm sorry, Rem. I forgot. I must have got rid of it, but it was a badge that had NI Week badge.
No, it's fine. Like, yeah, I know. Like, even Chris Roebuck, he has got like the badges like posted in his like the wall over there as well. I get lots and lots of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So whenever I get the champion one, I usually put an asterisk next to it on the thing.
Yeah. So like, yeah, that's really interesting. So Norm, like you have explained like a little bit about how you got started with LabVIEW and then how you joined the National Instrument as well. So at the same time, since you have seen a lot, and then there are like many people in the industry, they are not being experienced enough to use LabVIEW a lot, and people in the community like you and other people like who are replying a lot in the forums, they are actually like helping them a lot. So what do you think, like another aspect that how people can actually get involved in the community and how they can become better faster? Like you have any tips, because you have seen the both sides of the coin. For example, like you were working outside the NI, and now you have the opportunity to look from the NI side as well. So what do you want to tell to the customers like who are new to LabVIEW or using LabVIEW?
Let's see. Well, there's two things. There's if I'm reaching out to customers, that you the viewer watching this video is interested in LabVIEW and kind enough to support Ram and the LabVIEW architects here, I would say don't be complacent with sloppy code. Don't be complacent with wire bends that have just a 1 pixel bend in them, and unfortunately that concept, so I'll say, like, that's the one that if I had to say one thing, never leave a wire with a 1 pixel bend. Now I feel like I need to expand on that a little bit more, why I think that one's important. So many people that I've seen throughout the years, I've been programming LabVIEW for 20 years now. So 1999 was when I first started. So I'm officially a 20-year veteran of programming LabVIEW. And the major difference that I see between code that works well and code that's a pain in the butt to deal with are, did the person who put it together care enough to recognize that a piece of graphical code, all of the graphical aspects of it, tell a story. It is part of the program. And although functionally, if you were to take a terminal and a node and route the wire in loops on the, all over the place, it would still work. Our ever-loving slider and chart exercise, right? That's the one that everybody always says, move a slider, see the move on a chart. Even in the simplest of VIs or the most complex of VIs, the attention to that little detail pays off in other ways. It's not about not having 1 pixel bends and wires. It's about recognizing that you are visually, anybody who's looking at your code, because really, if your code works perfect and never needs to be touched, then nobody will ever look at the diagram, and maybe it doesn't matter. But how often does that actually happen? code's always being worked on, always being added to by you or somebody else. And so the story that you're telling them by the way that you lay out terminals, by the way that you align structures, by the comments that you leave on the diagram, by the colors that you use to help enhance different things, they all speak something very specific so that you don't have to, so that the person looking at the code can get to the piece of information or chunk of code that matters most right away. And I work with a lot of, they're now technical support engineers. We changed things in NI. So now all the technical, the new hires that come straight from college, it gives me a bad reputation because I'm so picky about the way that diagrams are laid out. But as somebody is doing that laying out, and as you viewer of this video, if you take that extra, like on your next simple VI, I mean, just the simple one, take that extra time to do it really, really clean. You'll find that you will realize other things about the code as you're doing it, because you're spending more time in front of it. You'll realize, ooh, maybe I should do this better, or ooh, that is kind of confusing to me. This logic where it's doing a Boolean X, Y, and Z, or maybe maybe all of this code that's doing file saving is too close to my algorithm and it makes it harder to understand. The extra time that you spend actually massaging the diagram, taking advantage of what, keeping things straight, will yield a better end product, which is going to be easier to debug. And I would have to say the biggest part of that, why does it matter to make it easier to debug? I don't have, my girls are sleeping right now. My wife and I just adopted 2 baby girls. And if you think about the fact that the person who's going to be touching your code next has family, and your desire to just have the run arrow broken and leave it is going to stop that person from going home, spending time with their family. So there's a funnier way of putting it, pretend like the person who's going to work on your code next is a crazy maniac psychopath that knows where you, which is comical, but the more truthful less likely that, but much more likely that they've got a family that they want to get home to, and the easier you can make the code for them, the faster they're going to be able to. And I think it's good motivation for trying for anybody that's going down.
Yeah, absolutely, Norman. Like I also had opportunity to work with closely with the NI application engineering team here in India. For the last 2 years, I was a part of the LabVIEW Proficiency program here in India, and sometimes the application engineering team were trying to support all these scientists, engineers who would start writing the code without real wisdom of why. So they will send out the code to application engineering team, and sometimes whenever I see it would literally make me cry and everything. They do not how to write a proper code and everything, and then sometimes they create something a mess, and then there's no way to deal it. For example, the diagram is too big, it's larger than the map of the Earth, and sometimes too many property nodes and all these kind of things. So in this context, what do you want to suggest to the people who maybe just like you said, you have given a very nice analogy that if you do it properly, the person who is going to inherit that code, they're not going to suffer. But at the same time, I want to give the suggestion that I know you have already told s'mores. I think that is going to be sort of a solution to that one. So can you explain in a little bit from yourself that what exactly is s'mores?
Okay. So the connection's pretty weak at the moment. Can you hear me okay? Ram?
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Norman, I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, I think there was a bit of a delay there, so maybe it's
yeah.
So when we're talking about what's going to help these programmers program better, one is having somebody to help them understand what it could or should be, because there's a lot of blind leading the blind happening. So first and foremost, if you, viewer or Ram as well, feel that you have some wisdom and there's people around you that need that wisdom of how things could be, then being willing to be an active mentor is so important, because there's a lot of, like I said, it's just blind leading the blind. But that, other than that, if you're on your own and you don't have any ability to, once again, that's where the forums really come into handy, because then it's this, you don't have somebody sitting with you helping, but you have a whole forum community like a Lava. But if your principles, there's five guiding principles that I work with, that I think anybody who's creating the smallest of diagram to the largest of architecture, the concept of s'mores makes the biggest difference. Now, maybe you can put a link in the video to, there's a YouTube, that'd be awesome. But it's the concept of how do you look at your code? If it's a very simple thing, like say logging data points to a CSV file, right? It's about as simple as we all do it. But the concept of scalable, modular, reusable, extensible, and then simple. And you take, for simple, I always say it's going n+1. You're doing the same thing, but doing it just one more. So instead of saving one data point to a file from one channel, you're saving 2 data points. Is your code going to break just because you changed your data type from a scalar into an array of points or a cluster of 2 different channel information? Your code shouldn't. But so many people, when they make their code, it's extremely rigid. And I suppose actually even to get in front of even the s'mores acronym, the whole purpose of it is to build flexibility. Because if you look at any building, any extremely tall building, on a windy day, the building itself sways, right? And so that's by design. If the building was too rigid, the building would collapse. And so very similar, when we are all programming, we should take that same mentality of that building, although it's rigid in the bottom, overall it's very flexible, and then it will collapse. And so so when you have n+1, that's scalability. And so once you've determined, hey, I'm making a module or an architecture, how can I go n+1? Then you say, all right, now I need to make it modular, or whatever I'm doing. And the essence of modularity is functional containment. So on a diagram is a great example of that. Just keeping parts of code that should be together, and parts that code that don't really, there's some semi-associated, but they're not. Don't let all the wires cross all over. Don't put your, hey, I'm going to change the blinking status of a button on the front panel right next to my file. There's 2 separate functions. They should be functionally contained on a diagram. And that's the, you can take that up to, the modularity in terms of, hey, sub-VI or classes, and you can really blow those concepts that even the acronym itself actually scales to different levels of complexity of programs. So you got scalable, which is just going n+1, modular, take what you're doing that's scalable, figure out how to contain it. Then reusable. O is a different story. I'll leave that for another time. I'll optimize it out for the sake of the interview. But then when you have your code that is scalable and modular, then you think about, you stop worrying about your specific needs and you make it reusable. So if you've made a sub-VI, instead of leaving the name of the terminals and the default values of the terminals appropriate to your specific situation, you ask yourself, think this is something that somebody else might want to use. What is a much more appropriate input? So whether it's rate or timeout and things of that nature. And so, everybody thinks of reuse, and a lot of people say, oh, I've got this whole library of things. I'm just going to declare it as my reuse library. If you've never actually gone through the process of making the code reusable, it just turns into a bunch of rubbish. Because you've got weird, the worst example is when you put something simple out of the guts of a sub-VI that never really gets exercised, and it turns into the reuse library. And then somebody gets wrapped, and it gets wrapped. And next thing you know, it's on a production line. And then once every 36 months or something like that, they get this weird pop-up that's ha ha ha, the sky is green because somebody was funny and put a one-button dialogue inside the guts of your code, and it never was actually gone through to make it reusable. It was just turned into a piece of reuse. So once you're looking at things in scalable, modular, reusable, then you take a really big leap and you start to think about extensibility. Everything up to that point, you really haven't added functionality to the code. And extensibility is the concept of allowing code to change and modify in ways that you never intended with a lowered level of effort. And so I love to tell people the easiest way to make something extensible is to just leave an open space on a diagram and say, put your code here. Or if you're doing signal processing of something, have the data go into a sub-VI that's empty and write out. And now when you say somebody wants to look at the data, log it to disk, or do anything, instead of going into the large program, they just go into that one sub-VI and then they do whatever they need. That's their little sandbox. You've lowered the level of effort to add on to the program and not, once again, break this building. You've allowed this building to continue to sweat. Now, there's one big caveat to this entire acronym is that each of these steps builds a level of complexity into the program. It's just more complex. It's very flexible. But then the problem is if somebody who's going to be using the code or maintaining it or taking care of it can't handle all of those cool things. You use server, you use dynamic events, you did all these things. That's great. But if somebody on the other side, if you can't teach them or they don't have the time and they're not going to be able to support it, you have to start making hard choices to say, I like extensibility, but instead of using object-oriented programming in LabVIEW, I'm going to do something simpler. And you start pulling things back. And then you come up, then I would say that when you finally reach and you work your way through investigating the entire acronym of s'mores, then you're looking at, now it's time to program. Now it's time to actually step forward. You don't have to come up with a solution. Like I'm terrible at writing at pre-work. I am one of those people who will just start. But in my mind, I'm constantly churning. I'm on a diagram. I'm working through that in my head. I'm not writing it down. I'm not writing it out, but I'm making those conscious trade-offs. And if somebody's learning, you start small. Don't think you're going to apply these concepts to everything you do. It'd be great if you did. Start off on the next simple sub-module you make. Take that extra time and learn, get the muscle memory of how to do it. It's like any type of physical activity that's complex. You have to build up the and the experience doing it. So that is a way to walk through it because it is a decision matrix. It is a choice of, am I going to spend extra time doing it and then thinking about how it could be done. And then the other part is you just have to bite the bullet sometimes and say, I'm going to take too long to do this one thing. I'm going to take more time than I know that I could because I need to get familiar with making straight wires. I need to get familiar with making type diagrams whenever I make a cluster. I need to do these things. And then after a minute, it becomes second nature. That's where the speed comes in, right? That's where it's just a lot of these things I don't even think about it anymore. I drop terminals, I'm dropping nodes, I'm getting stuff a lot. And that result is I've got code that, after it's running, it doesn't take me very many more steps to actually get it into, hey, I wouldn't mind sharing this with the community.
Wow, that's like really nicely put, Norman. Like in the previous interview as well, Chris Chilino. So I took the interview of him, and then he told that that is like an art, just like you have mentioned and everything. It requires composition, it requires design, and then forethought and all this kind of thing. So Norman, like you had the opportunity to work at previously you discussed before you joined NI, you were working in other organizations. Probably like you were in the application development team or the product development or tests, all these kind of roles and everything. So what challenges you found? I know you are at the moment working as a customer success driver kind of role and everything. So what do you think, like from your previous learning when you're working in the previous organization where you're working as a application development or system engineer yourself, and now you are helping the fellow developer yourself. So what difference you have found, and what are the challenges, and how do you approach them?
So if I'm understanding the question right,
Yeah.
it's kind of the difference between working internally and externally and
Yeah, correct.
being
Yeah.
helping the customer.
Yeah, correct.
I would have to say one of the biggest differences between being the customer or trying to help the customer. Well, that's a tough one, because working inside of NI or outside of NI, or even in college, I've always taken on the role of trying to be mentors, a mentor to other people. And so when I was outside and I was working at Texas Instruments, I was actively trying, because I was a software infrastructure engineer for test. We had a bunch of test engineers around the team, and so we were working with them, trying to get them to use what we were making and understand things. So there was the guiding and the collaboration on what things should be there. Even like I said, when I was in university, same thing. And even at NI, there's a lot of, I'm still actively trying to teach people how to make a good example, make a good program. There's a lot of what we do. I think one of the biggest differences is I don't have to live with the code that we make.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Not always, but very often I will get the ability to work one-on-one with a customer and guide them, or create something for the customer. Here's your starting point, go. And so I don't live with the.
Yeah.
They'll be able to utilize it with relatively good success, and they aren't going to be upset. They're not going to be staying late because of my code.
Yeah.
But you work with all the, not all, but a lot of the engineers that are around me. They don't always look at it with the same perspective, and so there's a lot of I have to stand on desktops frequently and get frustrated to be like, no, this is not good enough. We need to do more, because they're seeing us and what we give them as an example of how it could and should be done. And so that's actually one of the big differences is, I'm not just some peon working at Texas Instruments. I'm at the mothership. So everybody that we work with is you're NI. But we're still a bunch of kids trying to figure out what the hell to do. Not that all of us are, young little kids, but there's plenty of still trying to understand what is the best way to do things, or trying to even define what is good. And it's been a bit of a challenge, and then the other part of it, the flip side, is when I am directly working with a customer, I go on site and I make these recommendations. It's really hard to kind of come back in a year after you've been there and just see how things maybe didn't quite get done, and you just cringe a little bit. It's like, no, it could have been, because I'm not there, and it's really hard sometimes to give these because the people look to me as an architect to be like, how should we architect the abstraction layer? How should we deal with these things? I can give them recommendations in a relatively short manner. I can give you a document, or talk to you for hours on end, but at the end of the day, you're going to be the engineers developing it. You're going to be the engineers maintaining it. So that is definitely one of an interesting twist of it. So if you watching this video have received anything from me, whether it's advice or architectures, and they've gone awry, feel free to reach back out to me and yell at me. I deserve it if anything. But if you've liked it, then feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There you go. I put a plug in for you on that one. So.
Yeah.
Still there?
Yeah, it's still there. Yeah. So that's like a really awesome advice to people and everything. So normally, I've watched one relatively older video. I'm not saying a too much older video, but I've seen this VI scripting ninja, on which you do all this kind of fancy things and everything. I also learned a lot, and then whenever I train, like engineer, scientist, or someone who is trying to become proficient in LabVIEW, I tell them like you have to implement this quick drop shortcuts and everything, keyboard shortcuts, all these kind of things. And at the end, like you also order the pizza with the like a scripting and everything. So like tell us a little bit about the story behind this, because I know like this is a little bit advanced stuff to like many viewers, I believe, who may not even know that like scripting is possible in LabVIEW and everything. So I think like it is best that like it comes from you yourself. So
okay, well, all right. So let's give a little bit of primer for those of you who don't know. There, presuming that at least maybe you've seen VI Server, where there's properties and methods to adjust the color of a graph or the status of a VI or some degree of VI Server. VI scripting is just simply all of those concepts of properties and methods for things not on the front panel, but things on the block diagram. So instead of moving a control on the front panel, you can move or reshape or resize a structure on the block diagram. And that can come in very handy, not for creating your entire program, but possibly for doing simple minor operations. And so LabVIEW scripting has been available in LabVIEW technically since LabVIEW 7. So possibly even before, but when Express VIs were introduced, scripting in LabVIEW was a very, very hidden feature, but critical and necessary to allow for these Express VIs to exist. And a few of us in the community actually on Lava kind of released out to the public, hey, this block diagram reference that that somehow accidentally got shown. And a lot of people in the community started playing with, hey, how can we hack scripting to exist? Because we all wanted to be able to augment our programming experience. A great example is, hey, I'm dropping nodes on a block diagram and I want to automatically align them, or I want to, instead of creating a constant one at a time for a bunch of terminals, I want to select a bunch of things on the block diagram and do this bulk operation. And that's just two simple examples. But we in the community recognized this isn't hard stuff. But LabVIEW and National Instruments as a company hasn't put this feature in yet. And so scripting gave us the ability to make the features in LabVIEW that we wanted, to make our programming experience more efficient or faster and things like that. And the video that I'm sure you'll link in there will kind of demonstrate some of those. It was a 2009, so it was 10 years ago actually. Video, so you get to see the difference between this face clean shaven. And
I'll share it. I'll share that link below.
It was a fun video. But that was when we officially released scripting, because it was a hidden thing for a long time, and I was very, very afraid to have it as a tool that would get released, because they're like, it's not supportable. There's no help files for it. There's no rules for it. How are we possibly going to not have people destroy and make corrupt code and everything?
Uncharted territories.
So eventually National Instruments and Christina Rogers and Greg Richardson advocated for the actual release of it to the public, and it was. And what ended up happening when scripting was there, there's this other part of it, like LabVIEW Speak, or G Speak as I'd like to call it. But LabVIEW Speak was this idea that Microsoft built into Windows, since Windows 3.1 actually has had a speech interpretation engine in the system. Where you could talk to your computer and it would automatically transcribe it. And I knew that, hey, LabVIEW scripting exists, this speech engine exists. I bet you that I could figure out how to merge the two of those things. And the idea just boiled in the back of my head for a long time, for, well, longish, and like multiple years. And it was the LabVIEW 8.6 when Quick Drop was released. No Quick Drop keyboard shortcuts. That was well before that point. Just Quick. And I realized that there's an engine in the background that allows you to just drop diagram objects. And so then the value proposition, LabVIEW 2008, hit me like a ton of bricks. I actually was at NI Week, saw the LabVIEW 8.6 demo, and I'm like, I'm doing this. So when I came home, I was living in Dallas at the time, left NI week. 2008 was a heck of a year for me, that's for sure. But one of the things that ended up happening is when I came home, I was up till 4 o'clock most nights, or actually the first night, working prototype, the very first night, when I was like, I am doing this. I'm going to, there must be features to drop, not only to to align elements on a diagram, but to drop elements on a diagram. And so yeah, I had stitched the two. Hey, you know, property. I could just say the word property node, and a property node would just appear on my block diagram. Or I could say for loop, and I could drop a for loop without doing anything. And it was just, and so I was so enthusiastic, so enamored, and I enjoyed it was kind of like the Wild West. There's no rules to scripting. There's no guidebook to how to do scripting at all. And so anything that you want to do, it's on you to figure it out. And very likely you'll be the first one to do it. Or at least back in the day you were. And so I was just so excited about it. And I spent, that very first night I had a functional prototype, and then I just kept refining it. And so, the net result is I have a tool that allows me to just, you know, I can speak anything that's on a palette, and then there's a whole mess of other commands, because scripting, I can make whatever I want. And so I made aligning things, and of course I made the one command at the end of the video because called get, because somebody used to walk up to me when I was at work, and I used to actually be on the computer talking to LabVIEW programming, and he was just heckling me. He's like, he'd always walk up behind me, LabVIEW, get pizza, LabVIEW, get pizza. And so I finally decided, you know, next time that he walks up behind me and he says, LabVIEW, get pizza, I'm going to open up a LabVIEW or a Internet Explorer browser to Pizza Hut. So I did that, and kind of the rest was history with that. It was actually pretty special, because that video was actually shown at the same time of Jeff Kodosky's keynote speak. So it was random in there, and it was that was how they found a way to kind of shoehorn it in. Never since has there been videos with Jeff's speech, and never before as well. So that's kind of been a one-time thing, which is pretty special for me.
Wow, really, really awesome. Like Norm, like you have like a change, you know, the direction where the LabVIEW has gone and everything as well. I know, like even now, like many people are still like unaware of what LabVIEW can do, and then like just by watching that one few minutes video, you can actually see that like wow, LabVIEW can do this even 10 years earlier. That is like you know, like sort of like crazy stuff for many people. So like Norman, like you have been using LabVIEW for like nearly 2 decades, and then you have been at NI for a while and everything. So we have seen that LabVIEW has evolved for a long time. When you came to India, like Jeff himself like introduced the channel wires, and now we have got like a Python integration as well. So as you know, like you are like an insider at the moment, and then how like now LabVIEW has even evolved from like a current gen to the next gen, NXG as well. And now like many people who do not know anything about the internet technologies, they can even publish their data into the internet without like doing any kind of like a, you know, CSS or like any kind of like a website design or anything. So what do you think, like where the LabVIEW is heading towards? Do you think that like whatever you have imagined, what we could do so that like we can further the capabilities of LabVIEW so that it can become one of the prominent programming language? I know like for the test developers, and then the test and measurement industry, who are the like industry leader and everything. But what do you think, like the features, it is still lacking? Or like you think that if this kind of feature will be there, then it would be even better in comparison to other like you know, generic programming languages?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's actually possibly a more challenging question than you'd imagine, especially being inside the walls. So everybody, I mean, people that know me and that have been around me at NI Week know that I'm not shy about saying things that marketing won't say. So I'll tell you what it is. The world around us right now in test and measurement or LabVIEW, it seems to be changing quite a bit. And what I mean by that is whereas NI and LabVIEW for a very long time was it was the de facto name in test and measurement, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't even question it.
Yeah.
The other players between .NET and Python they're gaining steam. It's impossible not to recognize that those environments are gaining steam in there. Now, I wholeheartedly believe in the graphical programming paradigm. NI is the only show in town that does it.
Yeah.
But I believe wholeheartedly that it's you can program, you can create programs faster. It's easier to actually navigate. But I think the question of where is it going in the future, and what are the features that are needed to bring it there. It depends on what you want the future to be. Do you want this future to be where NI and LabVIEW continue to dominate and be the leader in test and measurement programming language? Where do we want to reclaim the title? Do we want to make everybody that uses Python doing test and measurement to feel a little bit awkward using it and not using LabVIEW? Or do we want to turn LabVIEW as a thing into a general purpose language you could do for anything? Now, anybody who's been programming LabVIEW long enough and is excited about it and enjoys doing it wants to believe that LabVIEW is a general purpose programming language. And to a certain degree, it is. But if you look at the charter of what National Instrument does, and if you talk to the people that drive the product, and I asked Oski this maybe one of my very first NI weeks in 2004, 2003. Why aren't we trying to make this a general purpose language? When are we going to compete? When's this going to blow up into just? The general statement for over 20 years and continues to be is that this is an environment and a language for engineers and scientists. And they prioritize that as a company probably for a very, very long time. And so, hey, it is going to become something up there where it's like on the top 20 languages that anybody uses. The challenge is that we're never going to hit that. We're never going to hit that. Well, I don't foresee that happening in the next 10 to 20 years, hitting that point. But it doesn't mean that it is not have the ability to have quite a bit of capabilities to not only support you in your career as you learn, but do a ton of really cool things that are for general purpose programmers. I consider myself a general purpose programmer. I will make programs for myself at home for whether I want to talk to my computer or whether or not I want to save information off to a network share or something like that. I will LabVIEW through and through. But when it comes down to, what do we have in front of us? How do we leverage it? How do we support it? And then what should be in the future? Two things jump out at me. One is we as a community need to hold on to our enthusiasm and excitement for using it. That is something that continues. If our enthusiasm as a community has allowed LabVIEW to grow, National Instruments to grow, this company that we kind of base our careers along, and we have to hold firm to the fact that this is cool, this is different, and there's power in the programming paradigm, irrespective of whatever else exists out there. Is it good to learn these other languages and be adept at programming? Sure, I absolutely agree. But never, or fight, if anything, to not lose that excitement and recognizing this is a cool way to actually program. And then in terms of features that are going to lead us into the future, not the people, but the features, I would say look towards what LabVIEW NXG is doing. The way that they're not necessarily recreating computer science, but indeed the organization is trying to enable the environment in the programming ecosystem to have more general constructs, whether it be components. That's an NXG thing where we got LV libraries for project libraries, pack project libraries, LOBs, classes, and it's relatively disparate. So much time has been put into the NXG programming ecosystem to try to make it a much more fluid way of moving between these simple concepts of, I just have a GVI that's doing a virtual instrument on a diagram to architecture. And I know that it's not really much of it's not a flashy feature per se that's going to look cool. But I think that it's going to facilitate better programs and more stable programs to be written, because some of the places where, our users are the National Instruments LabVIEW user base has grown so much, and the people that have been doing it 20 plus years weren't happy doing simple programs anymore. So we need these very advanced concepts well beyond object-oriented programming. We need things like the traits and the fixins and in interfaces. These are constructs that are critical to making, it's still in test and measurement, still for engineers, but elaborate programs for doing engineering science work in general. And it's good to know that NI it took that to heart. We're not just trying to make something for the beginner user, which for everybody who starts to look at LabVIEW NXG, so many things just look not as, it's like it doesn't, the look and the feel is depending on who you are, can be off. And I'm still trying to get used to the different look and feel for everything. But one of the things that as I'm working through that environment, I'm like, this is the thing that I need to be learning, because if I want to make a big program, this should be a starting point. It shouldn't be Norm creates his own way of arranging things. Very similar to who people used to do object-oriented programming in LabVIEW by using VI Server. We would dynamically call it using VI Server, and now we have objects as a core construct. And if you use that construct, things work better. You leverage the environment. Similarly, so we're going to step into this new world of LabVIEW NXG, components, namespaces, a couple of the other ones I can't even remember right now. We need to stop doing all of these namespacing things ourselves and all of these other stuff that made it work in current gen, and going to LabVIEW NXG and figuring out the new way to work. So that is going to allow not necessarily the cool stuff to happen, but that's going to definitely allow people to write better, sustainable, and more modular programs, right? Scalable, modular, and modular, reusable, and programs along the way. So that's kind of how I see it moving into the future. I wish there was like for me, I'm an RF guy, and I'm doing wireless at National Instruments now. I'm not just a LabVIEW guy. So there's a ton of really, really neat RF stuff that's about to come out.
Wow.
I'm super excited about. So, but if you're an RF person, we can have another meeting talking about all the RF stuff that we do. So
Norman, we had the opportunity to view your 7 minutes this presentation during the CLA summit regarding the RF as well. Crazy animation and everything. Many people cannot even visualize, but you show this a crazy, awesome animation to visualize to all these people in the audience.
0 to RF, 60 seconds.
Yeah, that was really, really awesome. So now Norman, we'll move a little bit towards the community side. So can you tell us your first encounter with the community, and how's your experience? Maybe your first presentation, or the first mentorship. How's your experience at that time?
That's a good question. The community, the very first part of the community for me was started at university. So I was going to Marquette University at the time, and it just happened to be that there was they held the LabVIEW user group, the Milwaukee area user group. They held it at Marquette University, and that was really where I started seeing these presentations, and that's actually where I met Mark Bella. So if you haven't actually interviewed him, he's he's the person that you really should be interviewing. He's
I'll like contact him soon.
yeah, he's the guy that you really want to talk to.
Yeah.
He's a quality individual. But I met him there, and we just kind of formed this rapport and started talking about LabVIEW and different things. I think I was still at university, so I hadn't graduated yet. But yeah, that was it. And I think the salesperson at the time, Adam Sweet, had asked, "Hey, do you want to do the next presentation or something like that?" And so I forget if I had done a presentation on something I was doing, or he gave me the presentation to actually do. But I've never been shy in terms of being willing to talk about interesting concepts. And so that was my first foray into this bigger world LabVIEW community. And when I had finally graduated, interestingly enough, because I had, this is for anybody who's at college right now or wondering about the value of getting involved in this community, I'll tell you this: I've never needed to actively look for a job since before I graduated college. Because I was involved in the community, people in the community knew about me and that I was graduating. I was asked, and I started my job out of college with a nice pay and good people the day after I graduated. May 18th, I graduated. May 19th, I started. When I was starting to look for a different job, I was kind of getting burnt out at the one place that I was at. I was toying with the idea of looking for a job. And that's when actively reached out to me and says, "Hey, we know you because you've been active on Lava. You're a known entity. We know what you create because you post things. We can see what you do. We want you." And then when I went to National Instruments, it was the same thing. Because I was an active member, I wasn't just some programmer. I was willing to put my code out there. I was willing to help other people. The job came to me. And so there's such a huge benefit. Not only, so there's one aspect of it of just marketing yourself, but then in terms of being involved in the community, when you actively post something as an example to a person asks a question, how do I do whatever, and you put something together for them, unless you're kind of I won't say twisted individual, but very likely if you're posting something up, you will naturally try to do it better than you would for yourself. Even stupid, simple examples. And there's huge value in that, because you'll post your thing, somebody else will post theirs, they'll be side by side, but it is that extra effort, that extra kind of reason for trying put onto you, because that's the beauty of responding to somebody's post online. It's not write my art, it's not do my job for me. Sometimes it's do my homework. That's a different story. But it's just do this little, how do I do this little thing? And so it's this wonderful self-contained opportunity to just do something that, even if it's simple, looks really nice. And that's where I always encourage everybody, get on Lava. Personally, I like Lava more than the NI communities because it's a little bit more intimate. Look at all the new, don't just start clicking on posts, go to like unanswered posts. Try to be the first person to reply to a post, even if, hey, I have this question too. And just get involved right there, right at the front lines. And the learning that will happen by virtue of that, whether or not you're working in a lab and you're the only guy or gal doing these types of operations, or if you're even in a big team, because what will happen is if you're in a big team and you're the only one going to the forum pulling this wisdom and this knowledge, you'll come back to your team, whoa, this lady knows what she's doing, because really she's doing some neat things. So there's a great opportunity there to not only just help other people, but really your own experience just by spending a little bit of time forums can really you make a name for yourself, you learn a lot, and it forces you to learn how to do things better too.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, you can actually like compare your solution with like other individuals as well. There are like lots of people who have been like responding regularly.
Oh, yeah.
So that is like a really interesting thing. So apart from that, like a Norman, like we're slowly moving towards the end of the interview. So
Okay.
are you going to like present during the NI week, and what are you speaking on, and like where they can find you during the NI week?
Yeah, no, that's actually a great question. I'm glad. It's kind of comical if you actually look at my community involvement.
Yeah.
Since joining National Instruments, there usually is this massive uptick before NI week that I start to do. Because in this case, I have two separate presentations at NI week.
Wow.
One of them is if it bleeds, we can kill it. Ninja skills for test time reduction. So it's all about good test strategy for if you're trying to shave off minutes or trying to shave off microseconds. And then there's another one that is actually prophecy of the s'mores, coding principles delivered. And so previous years, whenever I've presented at NI week, since being at National Instruments, has always been during Alliance Day. I've never had the ability to do a general audience presentation. So this is actually the first time in many, many years where my presentation will not just be available to the Alliance members, but it will be available to the bigger community. So if you want to know more about s'mores, I'm kind of updating the presentation with new tips and tricks. So that is one of the presentations for people that ideally who've never heard of it before, because it's going to be possibly a lot of the same stuff. But it's going to be a deeper dive for those of you who might be new on it. And then the ninja skills for test time reduction, that's a brand new presentation. That would be really fun because I'm covering territory from stop being stupid to let's get really, really creative. Because most of what we do is some degree of test. So everybody should care a little bit about test time reduction. So or at least know how to do it when the time comes. So those are the two presentations. They're actually both happening on Tuesday of NI week. One at the beginning of the day, and I think the other one's at like 2:30. So one's right after the keynote, another one's at the end of the day. So it's going to be a very, very busy beginning of NI week for me for doing those presentations. But are you going to be there?
No, like I'm not available this time, but like hopefully, like I'll join you guys like next year.
Oh man, well that's but it's good to know that you might be there next year. And for anybody else who's watching this comes to NI week, if you search the catalog for presenters, I'm going to be the only Norm in the book. So just search. If there's another one, there's probably only another presentation. But I love to share and to mentor. It's not about hearing myself talk, but it's about getting other people excited about what we do. You know, sharing the passion. So I'd love to share the passion with anybody who gets a chance to.
Yeah, that is like truly put here by Norman. If you are traveling, any one of you is traveling to Austin for the NI week, like do not miss the opportunity to take the presentation from Norman. And I also had like a great experience with him because like when he was in India, Bangalore for the first TLA summit, he showed me his entire code regarding the extensible session framework and everything. It was mind-blowing and everything. Like I've been using the same framework for my work as well regularly. So thank you, Norman, for that one. And before we like wrap up this interview, what do you want to say in the ending note to the LabVIEW community, the LabVIEW champions? Like I know like I've not told them that like I'm interviewing like a Norman, but when like I'll be putting this interview soon, they might be like a surprise and glad as well as like the people who will be traveling to NI week, as well as the general audience and your like your fellow colleagues as well.
Let's see. So I would like to say to get other people excited because as the community has grown, as we have, because I remember what it was like 10 years ago when I first went, or no, was it 15 years ago when I first went to NI week? There's a lot of people in this close group of community that was extremely excited because we were young in our careers. we were learning these things. Michael Avaliotis, the Jim Krings of the world, Fabiola, the original crew that started so much of the passion in the community. And I think that we need to always be willing and trying to pass down that enthusiasm. Because the one thing that I never want to see is that all of a sudden the LabVIEW community just fizzles out. Because we're a community, and unless we are passionate to pass like I got 2 kids at home, I cannot spend the same amount of time that I did before, and that's okay. That's good. I should be able to pass this excitement to the next generation, and pick up the excitement running Lava or starting their own forum and things like
that's really awesome.
So to always be excited to share the passion, and if you're thinking about is it worth being passionate about, absolutely. Invest your time in learning and sharing. I do not believe that you would ever regret being excited about what you do and what you share.
Wow, that's like quite a like an ending note for this interview. Thank you very much, Norman, for like giving us time to express your the experience using with LabVIEW from your starting your journey till where you are right now. It has been like a truly enlightening interview with you. Hopefully, like I'll meet you in person like soon, and then like we can discuss further. So any person, like anyone who is traveling to NI Week, please do not forget to take the presentations from Norman. Thank you very much, Norman, for your time.
Absolutely. You take care of everybody else. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.